of. I hope everyone had a great holiday season. Let me know down in the comments below what your favorite parts of the holidays were. Mine honestly was just being able to be with my family. That is the favorite part for me. But back to our scheduled programming and my top books of 2023. I think last year I did I don't know what I did last year. I think I was trying to do like a 22 or something cute-ish, but I think I ended up maybe doing, I just picked a random number and I went with it. This year I tried to limit myself and I'm just doing top 10. I think that's just the best way to do it. I do have a couple honorable mentions here that we will go through at some point in this video. Another thing, I think last year when I did mine, it was like in no particular order, but this year I'm going to attempt to kind of put these in order for you. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and dive into my top 10 with a couple honorable mentions of 2023. All right, so starting off our list with book 10, I have Mercy by Sarah Kate. This is the 4th book in the Salacious Players Club. This one was a standout for me because, one, I was always intrigued by Maggie because she was the only female co-owner of the Salacious Players Club, and we were meant to really not like Beau from the first book with Charlotte and Emerson. He kind of redeems himself a little bit, but he's just, not our hero. So I was really looking forward to seeing how that was going to play out. And I loved the relationship. Nothing is going to top Daddy Emerson for me and those vibes because okay, we're getting off topic, but okay. So no, nothing is gonna top Daddy Emerson for me, but their dynamic, Maggie and Beau. We have a reverse age gap here. There is a little bit of that forbidden aspect, obviously, but the way that Sarah Kate incorporates kink and BDSM and that taboo lifestyle, it incorporates that into, especially for these two, healing in two separate different ways. Maggie is very domineering, has that business mentality, and she brings that into their relationship in a completely different way. And Beau being the person that he is, there is a lot of healing that needs to be done with him, a lot emotionally, and the way that it plays out between them. Maggie, yes, is the more domineering one. Beau is the submissive, but there is that push and pull where he does have a little bit of dominance in certain parts. She lets him have it, but doesn't let him get too far because she will pull those reins back. Their full dynamic, the way that the kinks work to really heal them, I just found myself completely enraptured by it. And aside from praise, it is probably one of my favorites of the series. Which brings us to number 9, which is Until I Get You by Claire Contreras. This is labeled as a dark romance, and even though there are some extremely dark undertones in this book, I don't view it as a dark romance. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't think that it would be a dark romance for other people. This might be a book that I would recommend as a stepping stone into dark romance, but for what I view dark romance, not so much, because, and I have to tiptoe around this because I don't want to spoil anything, but the dark romance is on the outside of our couple. I love how Until I Get You has a double meaning for me because there is a mystery, if you will, on the outskirts of this as well, which I do remember saying when I talked about this book, whatever month that I read it in my wrap up. If you are paying attention, it's not quite a mystery. I figured out what was going on way early on. I don't know if the author wanted you to know what was going on, but if you're paying attention, that's all I'm going to say. You can figure it out very, very, very early on. But this follows Lila and Lachlan. This is a bit of a sports romance as well. He plays hockey, I believe, and she played soccer at some point in her life. So they both are into sports, but Lila has been going through a very difficult time when she meets Lachlan, and Lachlan is this big player that gets whatever he wants when he wants. He has no shortage of women flocking at his feet. So when he meets Lila and she wants nothing to do with him, he's completely taken back and is like, wait, Why are you not flocking at my feet? And so the tables are kind of turned with him, where he is more intrigued by Lila than Lila is of him, and he wants to know, like, what, why don't you want me, and how can I get you? And that is basically how their relationship starts. Once Lila starts to let Lachlan in, their relationship develops very quickly. It's a very deep relationship. They have a very intense connection, but it is all in the shadows. It has to be hidden because, well, Lila has a stalker. And that is the little mystery in the background of what's going on. And you don't know, like, what the deal is with the stalker and how far that has gone. And that comes out as you progress in the story. But also, there is a bit of a time jump because I think it's like a 3-year time jump, and Lila basically has like disappeared, and Lachlan is not okay with it. He is pretty powerful in what he does as a job now, and so his main goal basically is to find Lila wherever she is and make her pay. And I think that is a little bit of where another part of like the dark romance comes in, because not only the dark romance from her stalker, but the dark romance of him wanting to make her pay. But I honestly, like, that part I didn't buy too much, because it wasn't like he didn't want to make her pay. He just wanted her back in his life. There was no real payment. Like, I just want you back in my life. You fucked with my heart. You broke it. But even though I'm still mad at you, like, I still completely want you. And I'm going to do everything in my power to get you. And I will protect you. I love you. It is what it is. And then so when they meet up 3 years later, everything basically comes to a head. And that's when everything is revealed. This one, I will say, I was a little surprised made it to the list. But it stayed with me throughout the year. So there it is. Which brings us to, what number are we on? Number 8, which is The Summer We Fell by Elizabeth O'Rourke. I have to say, Elizabeth O'Rourke's writing, I love it. Why I haven't read more, I have a lot of her books on my TBR, and she is definitely one of the authors that I want to read more of in 2024. There are a lot of authors that I want to read more of and start in 2024. So I feel like my eyes are bigger than my stomach kind of thing with this. But we'll see. Let's talk about The Summer We Fell, which follows Luke and Juliet. Amazing story. This is another book that I would come back to after I read it. And there's nothing huge that sticks out. It's just something that I constantly thought about. The relationship between these two of kind of right person, wrong time. Juliet is dating and living with Luke's best friend. She lives with their family. The family doesn't quite treat her right, and that whole scenario really irritated me. Even her boyfriend, which I can't even remember his name at the moment, but even her boyfriend, like, just didn't treat her right. And Luke comes into this family dynamic. He stays with them for the summer so he can work and surf. He's a huge surfer. That's what he wants to do with his life. And when he comes in, he immediately sees Juliet for who she is, that she is way more than this entire family gives her credit for. And he sees all of that. He sees that they're not really treating her right. She's more of a servant than a girlfriend and a family member. He tries to get her to see her worth as well, but the way that he does it, Juliet thinks she hates him, and in turn doesn't like him either, but is constantly drawn to him. Now, the connection that she may have, or the attraction that she has for him, is completely off limits, right? Because she's dating his best friend, and he is only there for the summer. Now, this book does span many long years, so he leaves after the first summer but does come back the second summer, and you see their relationship progress a little bit more until there is this huge elephant in the room of my hate for you, which really was never hate. It was just a miscommunication. It's something way more, and something that just can't happen because I'm dating somebody else. Like, I'm going to marry somebody else, basically. What stuck with me the most, I think, was not only just the amazing writing of this book, but the connection that these two had. That push and pull of we can't be together, like that right person, wrong time. How do I get out of this situation that I'm in to be in a situation that I want? Like, how do I not hurt everybody? Because Juliet's self-esteem and her self-worth has taken a really big nosedive because of the situation that she's in. I mean, her family was just not a great family, treated her really, really poorly. So she ended up moving into her boyfriend's house and basically was more of a servant than a part of the family. and then is grown up now and is somewhat famous, but is like repeating this cycle of bad relationships. And now in the present where we're at, she is coming back to the small town, and so is Luke, and they have to deal with some demons that happened in the past and deal with the future as well. And it was a lot. Like, I think that's why it stayed with me, because it wasn't just an enemies to friends to lovers, and there is so much going on in this book. There's so many twists and turns. There's so much emotion and the connection, because you want these two to be together. And Luke is unlike a lot of the heroes that I do read. He is more of that like Rottweiler cinnamon roll hero, very much on the other spectrum of what we typically read. I love that alpha male hero. I love that over the top possessive hero. Like, I just really like those red flags. I love reading about them, but I also really enjoy reading a hero like this who just wants the best for the lady he loves. So I highly recommend, if you haven't read anything by Elizabeth O'Rourke, to pick something up. This is a great standalone book to start with. I definitely plan on reading more from her in 2024, so maybe we'll have another one on next year's top 10. Next up, we have book number 7, and that is Untouchable by Sam Mariano. This is definitely a darker romance. However, I do want to say this. Going into this book and the reviews that I've read, just people talking about this book, I had different expectations for this book. I thought it was just going to be super dark bully romance, and it is, but more so at the very, very beginning. I remember reading the beginning of this, that first huge scene. If you've read it, you know what I'm talking about, and thinking, I don't know if I can do this. This is like, oh boy. But I do have to say, like, if you can get past that, the rest of the book didn't really follow that formula for me. Yes, there is bullying in it. Yes, it is a dark romance. Yes, Carter is that alpha male, that possessive male, that over the top male that I was just talking about. He is all of that. He is crazy. And I loved every single second of it. But I think, like, I thought that was going to be very prevalent throughout the book. And I don't know exactly what I was thinking, but it wasn't that. However, it was an amazing book, and I loved these two together. Zoe had to go through something really horrific with Carter, and Carter, like, he's messed up. But these two together, I loved it. I loved it. Carter, he crazy. He crazy. That first scene, I'm telling you, like, it can be very difficult to get through, because especially for me, like, I was like, how far is this gonna go? I don't. I could totally see people starting to read this book and putting it down, like not going any further, because they just can't get through this scene. But I'm telling you, these two together, it was like this perfectly composite of opposites attract. And we love our alpha male and our over the top hero, and we love how they're just on the tip of being like psychotic, but they bend for just that right person. That is Carter, Mahoney, and Zoe. That is them to a T. I think I just thought like it was going to be a bully romance, and that bullying was going to continue throughout much of the book. That is not the case, but is it a bully romance? Yeah. Like, Carter be crazy. Is it a dark romance? Yeah. Carter be crazy. But the chemistry between these two, and the way Carter is with Zoe, the mind games that he plays with her, it was more of like, this man is trying to find somebody that can put up with his crazy, that can deal with him on a day-to-day basis. Once I find that person, then I'm not letting that person go, because like, nobody can deal with my crazy. And Zoe, she definitely meets him every single step of the way. So they are in my number 7 of 2023, which brings us to book number 6. What do I have for 6? I have to find it. It's not in order. We are talking about the Devil's Night series but book number 3, Kill Switch, was an absolute standout from that entire series for me because of Damon, who was definitely intriguing throughout the series, but to know that he was going to be our main character, our hero, if you will, in his story. At some point, we were going to get his story, and he was going to be our hero, and how this insane person, who, let's face it, we all hated, especially in book 1, Corrupt. Like, no, don't want nothing to do with this guy. Like, somebody needs to kill this guy because he's absolutely insane. How are we going to go from that to completely falling in love with this crazy alpha male? Like, you want the red flags, you want an alpha, you want a completely possessive, insane character, you want your over the top psychopath. Here you go. Damon's gonna be that for you. But Penelope Douglas has been one of those authors for me that I know I can trust. I know their writing. I know what they bring to the table, and quite frankly, is one of those authors that if they write it, I'm gonna read it. This was just such a phenomenal read for me. Like, everything about Damon, I loved. Being able to be inside his mind finally and understand like where he really comes from, because you do get a little snippet in books 1 and 2 about him, and you kind of see where his brain is at, but you really don't know until you're in his mind, right? There is that. There's his whole backstory, but then his and Winter's story was just, to me, it was beautiful. Because Damon, like, for me, at the core of Damon, like, he just wants to be loved for who he is. He wants to know that he will push and you won't go away. That's why he's built this family, his found family. His friends are his family, but he's going to push. He's going to continue to push to make sure that you won't go away. With Winter, you see a completely different side of him, which, again, is just so amazing to me, from who he was in Corrupt and a little bit of Hideaway to who we see him be in Kill Switch, is like night and day. And then also we have our female heroine, who is honestly just a phenomenal heroine, exactly what Damon needs. Their connection is immediate, but their connection also has a way bigger history than we thought. That comes to light. But I think some of my favorite parts of the book were those stolen moments when they were back in high school and watching that connection form between these two. Just all of it. It was a great story. I loved it all. I want more from them for sure. Let's move to number 5, which is actually another series. This is the Perfectly Imperfect series by Neva Altaj. There is no way that I could create a list for 2023 and not talk about the amazing series that is the Perfectly Imperfect series. These books are, I feel like everybody who's read this book, they've been a standout this year. I mean, I've said it time and time again, and I'll say it again. These books are short, but there is so much jam-packed into these books. There is going to be that element of insta-love, but it's not inherently felt. It was extremely hard for me to narrow it down to favorites, because I've loved every couple for different reasons, but there are 2 books here that I want to talk about very quickly that just have a little bit more of my heart. And the first one being book number 2, which is Broken Whispers. This is Bianca and Mikhail's story. Just fell in love with Mikhail from the very beginning. This scarred hero, literally scarred hero, who thinks he just doesn't deserve anything, to find his woman, to find love in Bianca, the way she accepts him. And then also there is that daddy aspect as well. Mikhail is a daddy, and the way he is with his daughter endeared him a little bit more to me. But these two, I just, so good. The next one, which is for sure a standout for me, I don't have this one with me yet, but it is book number 6. It's Fractured Souls. This is Paval and Asia's story. This one, I think it's safe to say for me, this one is at the top of the list for me. I love how all of these couples are vastly different. You know, you're in the same world, but we do have different factions of the mafia in different areas and regions, and that's how they're like commingling. But this one was different from all of the rest. It had almost like a different formula, but for me, it was absolutely beautiful. It was, I mean, again, these are very quick reads, but I could not put this down because I had to know how Asia was going to work through the trauma that she's endured, how Paval helps her, how he's very innately possessive of her and just has that mentality of I must protect her and be what she needs, but also in being what she needs, pushing her to get a little bit further out of her comfort zone to heal. And helps her with that healing process and that connection between these two grow even stronger because seemingly here's this really huge man who does some horrible things for a living who you would think she wouldn't want anything to do with after the ordeal that she's just been through. But also here's this really big, almost teddy bear like guy who I see as a protector, who is going to be my protector. This series, I mean, it's been an amazing ride. I've loved every single book. One of my top mafia series recommendations for sure. I also would recommend the series if you're just starting out in mafia or not quite for sure if you like mafia. I would definitely start with a series like Perfectly Imperfect. Next up, we have book number 4. This also is a part of a series, and although I absolutely recommend this series, this by far is my favorite of the series, and it is Reckless by Elsie Silver. This is part of the Chestnut Springs series. I know a lot of people have heart emoji eyes for Heartless, Willa, and Cade, but for me, it's Reckless all day long. This book, I mean, whew, you know what? Here it is again. We have another daddy. Theo was just like this man. Woo, this man. And we have Winter, who again is another character whom we didn't like. We met her in, well, she's been in, I think she has had like a cameo in all of them, but she was a bit more prevalent in the first one, Flawless. But to watch basically this Ice Queen thaw for Daddy Theo, oh my god. I mean, I loved every single second of this book. Theo, who, yes, he is into the bull riding, but he doesn't look like the bull rider. And I can get on board with a cowboy for sure, but the fact that he had his own style, I love how he sees how fiery Winter is and almost eggs that on because he loves that chemistry that comes from that, you know, that it's like foreplay for him almost. The banter between these two, the chemistry between these two, and then of course my heart melted even more when he meets his little girl. I mean, you've read it. I know that you've read it. Everybody has read this book, but this by far, like, I just, everything that it encompassed, Theo for sure. His sweet little remarks, like the things that he does for Winter, the way he shows her that relationships don't have to be what she's seen; they can be so much better, and that you can have a partner who is behind you 100%, who supports you in everything that you do, who doesn't need to one up you, or it's okay if you one up them. I am here for you. To see her heal because of Theo's just amazingness, it was it for me. This one's my top. All right, book number 3. Actually, before we do that, let's talk about my honorable mentions really quick. I have 2 honorable mentions that I want to talk about. Number 1 is a novella, and that is Irresistible Stranger by Lucia Franco. Oh my god. If we don't get a full-length novel of these two. Well, let's just say, like, I'm going to continuously beg until we get a full-length novel of these two, because, oh my gosh, the amount of information she jam-packed into, like, 70 pages. The chemistry between these two, the good time sex scenes between these two, like, oh my god. Chase lounge, the bed, the, y'all, amazing. We need a full-length novel, because this cannot be it. I mean, like, how do you go to another man after you've had, no, because, like, this cannot be it. It can't. So definitely read Irresistible Stranger if you have not, by Lucy Franco, because I'm going to need more people to start begging her for a full-length novel. Okay. Number 2 for the honorable mention, and my last honorable mention for the year, is going to be The Fisherman Duet by Julie Ann. This is The Naked Fisherman and The Lost Fisherman. This follows Fisher and Reese, but let me tell you why it's an honorable mention for me, because not only do I find myself thinking of this duet often, but it was my first read by Julie Ann, and honestly, probably was going to be my last, until the last freaking paragraph, like basically the last couple sentences of the first book. I was hell-bent on the fact that I could not handle Reese. She was just too much for me, like too naive. But I knew that it was a duet, and I was not going to read the second book. I was not going to continue because I just didn't care, because I just couldn't deal. But it was basically the last couple sentences, that last paragraph, and it hooked me. I had to know what happened, and I'm so glad that I did. In reading that second book, I had a completely different outlook on the first book, and it made me appreciate that first book way more after reading the second book. Because Reese, I feel like, is supposed to irritate you. She is absolutely naive, and that is Fisher's, the way that he is with Reese is because of how naive she is, because she's been sheltered her entire life. She grew up in a very religious household, so it was very frustrating to read her stance and her viewpoint. I could kind of understand where she was coming from because of the way that she was brought up, kind of, but more so, this book resonated with me and stood out to me because of a few things. The relationship between her and Fisher in the first book, and how he helped her, or tried to help her, or was trying to help her in the first book to open up her eyes and to think for herself. She had a brain. Like, just don't stop regurgitating what you've been told. What have you learned? To the second book, where Reese is now helping Fisher with something. Then also this great connection that they had. But I think underlying all of that was the transformation that Reese goes through from the first book to the second book. She grows up and becomes her own person with her own viewpoints. That's what resonated with me. And I think that I would love to reread this duet at some point, knowing what I know now. I think I would have a better appreciation for the first book reading it again, whereas I only had appreciation for the first book after I was reading the second book, if that makes any sense. So that is why this one is an honorable mention. All right, now we're going to move on to my top 3 for the year, and quite frankly, these 3 are like interchangeable. I'm going to stick with what I have here, but just know that these are like the top 3. And basically in no particular order, but I have them in an order for you here. And we are going to start off with a breakout for me this year, and that is Hawk by Jessie Hall. Amazing author. She has a small backlist, and I'm definitely going to devour that this year. I almost read one of her other books before the end of the year, but I decided not to, for whatever reason that I decided to at that moment. But we are talking about Hawk and Nicole, or Cole, or Nick, and Hawk. And oh my god, like, top boyfriend of the year. One of the top. this man right here. I am not typically into the cheating trope. I don't like it. It can be done very good. This is one of those instances where it's done well. I read a book at the beginning of the year that had cheating in it, and I absolutely despised it. It irritated me. It made no sense. It just wasn't, I did not like it. This, on the other hand, this was done right because these two. So Nicole is living a life that is really good on paper, but is just not the life that she wants. But because it looks so glorious and sparkly and beautiful on paper, she's living it. She's living with her longtime boyfriend who, again, is great on paper, but like just doesn't do it for her, especially in the bedroom. The man can take some classes, he can do some things, but nonetheless, they are living in their happy little bubble until Hawk gets out of prison and, unbeknownst to Nicole, is going to start living with them. And the way that she finds out that he is going to be living with her and her boyfriend is she walks in on him having sex in the spare bedroom. And hello, I'm your new roommate. So they have this very tumultuous start. It is like it's again that type of animosity. We don't like each other, but I'm very intrigued by you. Like, I know that I shouldn't like you, but there's just something about you that keeps drawing me towards you, and I shouldn't want to, but I want to know more. And that is how the relationship starts. She works from home, and so whenever her boyfriend is off at work, they are together a lot. So they get to know each other. Nicole is very, very intrigued by Hawk immediately, but tries to distance herself. That doesn't work out quite as well as she wants. Hawk is way more than what meets the eye. Like, what you think that you're getting, but you're getting way more as well. And Nicole kind of chips through the layers of who he really is and finds out that he definitely is not who she thought he was at the beginning. And she sees that outward appearances can be completely deceiving, and so that's it. That's basically all that I'm going to say to that. But I'm just saying, like, this book, so amazing. I loved all of it. I really can't wait to dive into the rest of her books, but this one for sure a standout for me for this year. All right, number 2 is a very recent read for me that blew me away. If you watched my last video, I think it's probably my last video, then you will not be surprised by this, but it is The Lovely Return by Carrie and Cole. Oh my god. Like, I wasn't surprised that I was going to love it. It is Carrie and Cole, and quite frankly, another author that if she writes it, I will read it. And I knew, because of the context of the story, I was definitely in good hands with her, because this does deal with a pretty extensive age gap, and it also deals with reincarnation. I loved everything. There's nothing more that I wanted. Perfect. It was perfect. There were twists and turns that I didn't see coming, but that really added to the story. That really just cemented this story for me. So we follow Alex and Penny. Alex is the one who loses the love of his life in a horrific accident and is basically become a fraction of who he was when his wife was alive. And also like this grumpy recluse, until one day, years after, a little girl walks into his workshop and inserts herself into his life, whether he wants it to happen or not. And this is Penny. She is 6 years old when she meets Alex, and there is, like I said, a pretty significant age gap. There is a 21-year age gap here. Of course, nothing nefarious happens between these two until Penny is of age, but it is very much needed for you to meet Penny when you do, and to see a little bit of her life growing up, to really get the bigger picture from her, and then also to see the way that her and Alex's relationship becomes a friendship and then progresses to what it is at the end of the story. But it is something that I would say, if you are on the fence of because of the reincarnation aspect, or you're just not really like into that kind of thing, I would say to maybe try to put that aside and to attempt to read this book, because I don't think that you would be disappointed if you do. At its core, it's a beautiful, beautiful love story, but there is so much going on, and the way that Carrie and Cole writes it, she did a fantastic, like a phenomenal job, and it's one that I will be continuing to recommend. So you will see this in future videos, I'm sure. Which brings me to my top read of the year. Part of another series. I don't think that anybody is going to be surprised in the least with this. This is part of a series, but also its own little duet. If you haven't guessed, I'm sure that gave it away. And that is Saving and Redeeming 6 by Chloe Walsh. Whew, these two. So, these are heavy. I'm probably only going to hold up Saving 6 for right now. This is Joey and Aoife's story. So Joey we meet in Keeping and Binding 13. He is Shannon's older brother and basically the caretaker of this family that is absolutely broken. I know that some people might be hesitant to start reading these. I was a little hesitant to read them, even though I was like itching to read them. I was hesitant because of Binding and Keeping 13. Especially Keeping 13 was extremely emotional. I knew that we were probably going to have to go through that again. Even though I was itching to read it, I knew that we were probably going to have to go through those really extremely emotional parts again, and it was almost like I had to work myself up to it. It is going to be emotional, but one thing that Chloe Walsh can do is tell a damn story, is write a damn book. You are going through some of the same things, but you are getting two completely different points of view. So Joey was one of the standout characters for me in Binding and Keeping 13. My heart went out to him because he was doing so much at such a young age for this family, to keep this family together the best way that he could, and to shield his brothers and sister as much as he could. But you can only do so much, especially at that age, and also with dealing the things that he's dealing with. So this is his and Aoife's story. What I liked about this was, like, especially in Saving 6, this book is like basically the prequel of events that happened in Shannon and Johnny's story, if that makes sense. Like, stay with me here. By the time we get to Redeeming 6, we are starting to get into the era of when Shannon starts Tillman College. So all of this is a preview before that. So you're really not reliving anything again until we get into Redeeming 6. But this is like the story of how him and Aoife get together, how they met, how they became friends, their back and forth relationship. What I will say, and I think I've mentioned this before, but Aoife completely surprised me in this book. She is one of my favorite heroines of this year. And I think it surprised me more because she seemed completely different when I was reading Johnny and Shannon's story. She seemed almost more meek. She didn't see, I mean, like, that is, if you've read these, like, that is not Aoife at all. A little bit of her comes out in the end of Keeping 13 when she's battling with the bitch that's going after Shannon. And I remember thinking, that's my girl right there. Yes, but that is essentially Aoife throughout both of these books. She is a strong, strong female character. She is the backbone to Joey. Their relationship is just as emotional as Johnny and Shannon's was, but completely different. It's really like you were getting two different stories. But I also really enjoyed seeing some of the same scenes from Binding and Keeping 13. Obviously, you're seeing it from two different points of view, but getting to see certain things and certain people from like different points of view was really, really amazing how Chloe Walsh does this. I mean, there just honestly isn't enough that I can say about the series. People are so scared to read this if they haven't read it because of all the hype, and I completely understand that because I'm the same way. I have shied away from many, many books because of the hype surrounding it. There are certain books that I haven't read because of the hype, and I've had both outcomes of reading it and not seeing the hype, and reading it and completely getting the hype. This whole series, I feel like, has definitely taken people by surprise considering how hyped up it is. I mean, honestly, it is one of those that is absolutely worth the hype. It amazes me every single time I pick these books up just how great of a writer Chloe Walsh is. I mean, she really makes you feel these characters. You feel what they're feeling. You want the best for them. All the supporting characters who eventually will get their books, the characters that won't get their books but are just supporting, like Johnny's parents, like their little brothers, every single character has been standout. So, I mean, how could they not be the top number one for 2023? Here they are. That is it. Okay, guys, so that is it. I really hope that this video isn't going to be like astronomically long. But thank you for watching. I cannot believe that I just filmed my top 10 for 2023. I can't wait to see what we get into in 2024 as far as reading. I do have some ideas as far as what I want to read. As for one of the videos that I had planned to film, which was 2024 anticipated releases for like the first quarter of the year, I still could do that, but I've seen quite a few videos pop up on BookTube of that, and I feel like that can be a little redundant. However, if it's something that you would like me to film, I absolutely would, because I do have a list. But I think what I would like to do is just create a post of like the top 5 or 6 books that I'm most excited for the first quarter of the year, and then go ahead and do maybe like a spring summer anticipated release video for you guys. So let me know again down below if that you would be interested in that. Nonetheless, I still will be doing a post of that. I still have a couple other videos that I want to film. They might be up for the end of the year, but nonetheless, they still will be up. In the meantime, let me know what your top 3 books of 2023 were down in the comments below. There might be something there that I need to add to my list for 2024. And that's going to do it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Until next time, happy reading. Bye.